Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This is like the fourth or fifth time I'm trying recording this. But anyway, today in this video I'm going to be going through common building mistakes that I see people make in computers. They're just basic beginner mistakes. They're nothing bad, but I'll go through just the 10 that I could think of at the top of my head, but also how to go about avoiding these mistakes so that your PC can be the best that it can be. And number 10 is actually quite surprising how often it happens. So stay tuned. Alright, so number one is the 2-point mounting hardware for coolers. So basically, what I mean by that is coolers that use the AM4 mounting hardware that comes with motherboards. It's not that it's bad, it's just finicky and annoying. Personally, as well, in comparison to a 4-point mounting solution, it's not as good because you don't get as solid of a mount, but it does the job. Now, it is excessively finicky and it can be annoying, and with it being finicky, it makes it easy to be scratching off thermal paste off the cooler, meaning that you have to repaste and try again. So here is how I go about avoiding that mistake, which is you have to screw the metal tabs in, metal tabs that hook onto the plastic clips. I leave both of those tabs screwed on enough that they won't fall off the cooler, but loose enough that I have a lot of movement in them. Once I have both tabs on their clips, then I tighten them down. That's just how I go about that. Mistake number two. We're moving on from 2-point mounting hardware for coolers to 4-point mounting hardware for coolers. A lot of people come in going that it just doesn't work, that their cooler just doesn't screw on properly, they can't get the opposite, diagonally opposite screw to screw on. That's because that they have actually screwed on that first screw all the way. So to avoid this is very simple. Instead of screwing that first screw all the way, do 2 to 4 full rotations of the screwdriver, stop, move to the diagonally opposite screw. So let's say we go from top left to top right. I've got no idea if it's going to be top left and top right in the edit, but at least as I'm recording it, it is. And again, so if you've gone from top left to top right, you then do the top left to bottom right. It's been a big day. From there, again, 2 to 4 full rotations of the screwdriver, then move to from bottom right to top right, 2 to 4 full turns, then to bottom left, 2 to 4 full turns, and then repeat that process over and over again until you can't screw any of the screws in any further. And they should just be finger tight. Okay? Doing that will help you avoid 1, a bad mount, 2, having to repaste the cooler. Number 3, RAM location. So the DIMM slots that you put your RAM sticks into. There is a correct slot for the sticks. If you've got a 4-slot board and you're only using 2 of those slots, there are correct slots to be using first. If you've just got 1 stick, there is correct slots. Regardless of if it's a 4-slot board or a 2-slot board, there is a correct slot. So, the solution to this is read the goddamn manual. You read the manual, you're going to be all sorted. Okay? As a beginner builder, the best advice that you can hear is to read the manual. Take your time, read the manual. It will help you out so much. Also, if you ever upgrade your RAM, make sure to get the same stick. That way you have matching RAM, matching memory, because it's just going to work so much better. You're unlikely to have system instabilities. Once you start having mismatched RAM, you can come into various forms of system instabilities. Mistake number 4, motherboard standoffs. So 9 times out of 10, a computer case will have standoffs pre-installed. Those standoffs can, again, 9 times out of 10, be taken out, added to, or moved. If, let's say, that the case has its standoffs in orientation for a full-size ATX board and you're using an MATX board, then you've got to move that bottom row of standoffs up a little bit because you've got a board that's not as tall. The reason you want to be doing that is so that you don't put any pressure on the board, you're not flexing the board in some weird way or another, and that your motherboard has as many points of contact as possible for both rigidity, but also avoiding issues. One, again, flexing the board, cracking the PCB, but also causing damage elsewhere. But with standoffs as well, there is a risk. And if you uninstall standoffs correctly, you're going to be fine. And what I mean by this is, again, let's go with MATX board when the standoffs are in an ATX form factor. You need to have the standoffs in the correct locations for the screw holes on your motherboard. No more, no less. No less, we go back to a risk of flexing the board and causing damage. No more, if you have an extra standoff behind your board where the board doesn't allow for a standoff to be, you could actually short your motherboard. Possibly create a fire, but you're more likely to short a component on the board and have a brick. Have a massive $2,000 brick. So you want the exact amount of standoffs as your motherboard has holes for screws. Some cases come with a tool that will go over the standoffs, and then you can put a Phillips head to that tool to just aid you in uninstalling and reinstalling standoffs. Okay? If not, just get I think it's a number 5 hex head, and you'll be fine. Or nut driver. Number 5 nut driver, I think it's called. Now I'm thinking about it. Yeah. Mistake number 5, staying with motherboards, and this is another one that could actually potentially short out your motherboard, or at least HDMI ports and USB ports. And it's when you have to install the IO shield. It's not integrated on the motherboard itself, so it's just a separate piece of equipment that you got to put in the case. With that, there's little tabs on the back of the IO shield. Okay, if they end up going inside a port and you put a USB stick in, let's say you got a tab inside a USB port and you put a USB stick in, you actually run quite the risk of shorting out the port or the board. Those tabs are supposed to be on top of the housing. So if you need to bend those back, do be careful. They can actually cut you, and stab you. I've been stabbed on my pointer finger by the tabs. English isn't working for me at the moment. But the best way to move them is to either get a screwdriver and bend them up, or get your finger fully underneath the flat side of it. So instead of it being really pointy, get underneath so it's on the flat side. And then pull up. Just move your finger and pull the thing up. Okay? You're less likely to stab yourself that way. And then put your motherboard in. So obviously with the standoffs and the motherboard IO shields mistakes, test fit first before you screw your motherboard in. Number 6, not realizing how thick the GPU or graphics card is. Graphics cards, especially modern ones, are just getting thicker and thicker. They are girthy boys. Let's be fair here. That's fine, they need the cooling that they need. There's nothing wrong with that. Where I see mistakes though, and I've seen it quite a few times in the past month, is that someone needs a Wi-Fi card installed, or a capture card, sound card, basically another PCIe card, and they've got an MATX board, and their graphics card is on the top PCIe slot, where it should be, but the girth of the card, how thick it is, how many slots it takes, actually impedes onto the other slots so much that none of the other PCIe slots are usable. Now the solution to this is one of two things. Firstly, a full-size ATX board would solve the problem because there's more space for more PCIe slots. The other option is to go with a USB variant of what you want. So if you want capture cards to stream with or record gameplay, get a USB capture card instead of a PCIe capture card. If you want Wi-Fi, get a USB Wi-Fi adapter. More USB ports, just get a USB hub. Find a USB solution to the problem. That there is probably if you're already at the problem, the solution, if you're building the system, speccing it out, avoid the problem by just going with a full-size ATX board. Now the next mistake, I think what we're at, mistake number 7, hold up, mistake number 7, GPU location. Now this is a two-part one. It's going to be GPU location for case and GPU location on the motherboard. So I'm going to start with motherboard first because I've already actually touched base on it. Basically, your GPU should be installed, and this is a very basic rudimentary sense of you've only got one graphics card. Like, let's face it, SLI is dead. Having a multi-GPU setup is redundant these days. But just in case you have a multi-GPU computer, this doesn't exactly apply to you. But your first card or only card should be in the top PCIe slot. And there's a reason for that, and it's rather simple. That top slot has its PCIe lanes go straight to the CPU. Every other PCIe port will go to the chipset first before the CPU. So there's a little bit more latency involved. So for the best performance and latency, top slots is a must for a graphics card. Also, you get the full 16 lanes. Generally, the other slots, the other full length slots are by 8 and possibly even by 4. The next part of this problem is the case location. If you want to install your graphics card vertically, get a vertical mount adapter. I don't care if your case natively supports it or not, just get a vertical mount adapter. The reason is that most of the time a native mount will put your graphics card so close to the front glass or the side panel, more so, not the front glass, just the side panel, that you're going to choke the card for air and it's going to struggle. It's going to get a lot hotter, and with heat means less of a lifespan or slower speeds because of that heat. So for the best performance, get a proper vertical mounts kit so that your graphics card has plenty of airflow. Number 8, fan direction. Airflow is important. You don't want your fans competing with each other, whether it's case fans or cooling, or like air cooler fans, radiator fans. You don't want them competing with each other. Most fans, especially name brand fans, on the side of the housing somewhere, so you have 4 sides to the housing, there will be arrows that show you which way the air goes. Follow those. If for some reason your fans don't have those arrows, here's what to look for to find out which way the fans go. Basically, you got the side housing, and on either the top or the bottom side, there is plastic strips that go from the side housing to the middle, basically from corner to the middle, to the hub. That there is the back of the fan. That's, if you put your hand at the back of the fan, you will feel the air being pushed into your hand. Okay? From there, it's a fairly similar situation for installing fans into a case and into a radiator as the second mistake previously, which was the 4-point mounting coolers of just do it little bit by little bit. That way, no corner becomes really hard to screw into place. Okay. Number 9, cable management. Cable management is a bitch. It doesn't matter how many computers you build, cable management is the most frustrating thing for a PC build. Take your time with it. Not saying that your cable management has to be perfect, but at least make it neat so that when you make upgrades in the future, it's easier to handle everything in the back. So just make it as neat as possible. Nice tidy runs. You don't want cables everywhere. Have a run close to the front, close to the middle, and close to the back. Close to the front would probably be your front I/O ports. Middle be like SATA, motherboard, fans, RGB, GPU, and the back fans, and CPU power. Just make it nice and simple. Tie it down nice and neatly. You don't want big clumps. A lot of cases, you have trouble getting the side panel back on if you have big clumps of cable. So just try to avoid that. That way you don't bow the side panel. And take a breath. If it's getting frustrating, stop what you're doing, walk away, go do something for half an hour, come back and start again. And use as many zip ties as you want. Now the last point, point number 10, this may be surprising, it may be not, but your Windows product key. A lot of people forget the Windows product key. You'll be actually amazed as to how many people actually forget it. So the solution to forgetting the Windows product key, because there's a reason why people forget it, is because they're so busy learning about all the parts that they need, what's compatible and what's not. And they've got a budget in mind and all the hardware fits within that budget. And that's why they forget about the product keys, because they're so busy focusing about the hardware for a PC build. They're about the building parts, not the turn it on and loading it into an operating system. So the solution is very simple. When you go to spec out your build, Windows is the first thing to go into the build. Do Windows first, before your CPU, before your motherboard, before the RAM, before any other piece of hardware. Handle the operating system first, just get it onto the spec list, price it up, and that way you've got it there and you can't forget it. So yes, that there is 10 tips for avoiding some mistakes. Other things that I find is how people hold radiators for liquid cooling, whether it's an all-in-one or a custom loop. Hold the radiators from the side, that way you don't bend the fins. There's a few other things, just use common sense. The biggest thing that you can do though is if you get frustrated at any point during building a system is just to stop, walk away, go do something for half an hour and come back. Just take a breather and come back, try again. If it still isn't working for you, take everything to a computer shop, pay for their labor for them to build it for you, because you don't want to end up with a very expensive paperweight. But yes, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button down below as well as that like button. Do check out some of my other videos as well. I want to be doing more videos like this. And I hope that you all watch me in my next video and have a good week. See ya.